Happy Winning Wednesday, everyone. Okay, so lots going on cosmically right now. Kind of insane, and we are to the point of the year where a lot of people, a lot of astrologers, a lot of pretty much everyone, psychics and all that, have been talking about this point in the year, mid July on. So the rest of the year should be pretty exciting, I should say. A lot of manifestations coming to fruit. So a little bit of what's going on right now. And of course, I'm glad you're here too. But, I want to talk a little bit about something that I think could genuinely change how you see your entire life. And then I want to connect to what's happening again in the sky right now, because the timing is pretty much perfect. So we're going to talk about difference between what you were born with, what you learned. We're going to talk about how everything learned can be unlearned. And no matter how long, no matter if you're 40, 50, 60, 70 years old and you've been carrying this your entire life, it can be unlearned. So that's should be a really positive thing to actually hear right now. It is currently storm just rolled in like 2 minutes ago, right before I hit live. So if the power flickers or you hear a loud boom, that's why. So let's get into it. So first of all, right now, cosmically, there's a lot happening. So again, timing's kind of perfect. Mid-July through the rest of the year is supposed to be like super positive as far as energy, as far as things coming to fruit. So July 14th, which is yesterday, Tuesday, we moved into a new moon in Cancer. So Cancer is the sign of home, of emotional roots, of family, of nurturing and inner safety. And so new moon is always kind of like a beginning point. It's basically the moment where, the sky is going dark, right? Like the moon is completely dark. There's no light coming through it. And so this is opening kind of like a fresh cycle. And so new moon in Cancer is specifically asking us to look at, really honestly, at our emotional landscape, our emotional foundation, not our career, not, our 5-year plan. It's like our actual felt sense of safety. And like, where do you generally feel at home in your own life right now? Maybe it's not even in the house that you have. Like, where feels like home? Maybe it's outside in nature. Maybe it's going to the beach, right? Like, where does maybe something feel unsettled, or unresolved or unsafe? So new moon is asking you, wants you to start there before you start anywhere else. So alongside this new moon, and of course, like it's past, it was yesterday, but the energy is still pretty potent for about 48 to 72 hours. But alongside this new moon, we do have something called the Mercury Cazimi. So Cazimi happens when a planet sits exactly conjunct the sun. So it's close enough to be considered symbolically in the heart of the sun. Like it looks like it's like basically dead center. So when Mercury is Cazimi, it's thought to be illuminated from within, almost. It's kind of like supercharged with clarity. And so this is considered a most potent time and considered the most potent moments for mental clarity and insight and truth telling and in all of astrology. So this Cassimi is happening while we are still inside the retrograde shadow period of Mercury, which is a lot of like governing of communication and tech and thought and stories that we tell ourselves. So think about what this combination is actually doing. Like retrograde shadow period is already a time of review, of of old patterns and old conversations resurfacing so they can be looked at honestly. So add a Kazemi, which is a moment of intense illumination, adding that directly into the mix, and what you get is, all this old like emotions and material rising to the surface with clarity, like unusual clarity. And so I don't want this to overwhelm you, right? But it's basically coming to the surface to finally be seen clearly enough to like actually be like, oh, that's exactly why that happened, you know, um, and so that you can actually look at it in a different light or do something about it or take another path or whatever it is. So if you have noticed old thoughts creeping back in this week, old people coming into your awareness, or reaching out, or old stories about yourself, or an old fear or old belief you might have already worked through, or maybe grief, right? If it's suddenly appeared louder than it's been in a while, or like an old conversation surfaces out of nowhere, or an old wound has resurfaced out of nowhere, like none of this is like a step backwards. Don't think of it as like, oh gosh, I thought I healed that, maybe I did it. Like, this is actually the exact astrological moment doing precisely what it was designed to do. And that's shining a light directly on learned material so you can see it clearly enough to finally release it. And so this is where the whole conversation kind of comes full circle. So what's surfacing this week is learned material. It was installed somewhere along the way, right? Like, you weren't born with this kind of things, like these stories, these emotions, these feelings, but it's absorbed in a moment like when you did not have the capacity to filter or question it, right? And because it was learned, it can be unlearned. So new moon and this Kazemi are basically handing you the clarity to actually see it. So what you do with that clarity is all up to you. So let's move into what was learned and what was unlearned. So I want you to really actually sit with this distinction, because I do not think that most of us actually separate the two. And we kind of carry it all together, right? Like our natural wiring and our conditioned patterns, and it's all mixed in like one big pile of goop that we call our personality or our identity, right? Like our character is just who we are, right? And so it's actually not who you are, which would be good news, right? But a significant amount of it is what you learned. You learned from someone else or somebody's opinion or whatever it was. Think about like how you learned in the first place. So nobody comes into this world afraid of failure, and nobody arrives here believing that they're not enough, or that love has to be earned through performance, or that their needs come last or second even, or that anger's dangerous, or that rest has to be justified before you're allowed to do it. Like, you have to get everything else done before you can do it. So none of that is original wiring. Like, all of that was installed. So it's absorbed again from the environment, from our family systems, our teachers, our relationships, our repeated experiences. Usually, this happens usually in a moment where you were young and impressionable, and basically your brain was recording everything as absolute truth, and it didn't question it, like, or filter it. So I want to remind you of something that I have talked about before, because it matters. In the first several years of life, like typically between the ages of 0 to 7, like the brain is operating primarily in theta state. And that's the same brainwave state that adults go to when they're in deep meditation or hypnosis. So in theta, the brain is not evaluating or filtering, right? It's basically recording, it's directly recording everything, all the senses. So whatever was happening around you in those early years, whatever you had to do to feel safe or loved or seen, it gets encoded pretty quick, right? It's encoded as fact, and it's not as this is what happened in my house. It's more of like, this is how the world is. This is how the world works. And this is what is required of me in order to survive. And that's how the learning happened. Basically, it happened early on, quietly, without your conscious consent. And that means, again, it was learned, which means by definition, it's not permanent. And that means it can be unlearned. So this might be kind of hard to believe if you have been carrying a pattern for a long time. Again, maybe 40, 50, 60, 70 years. Maybe your whole life up until this point. And I understand why something practiced for that long might start to feel like, this is what it is. This is just how I am. Like, this is without a doubt bedrock, right? And like, it's simply who you are at your core. There's the thunder. Ooh, and it set off a car alarm. Fun. But like, not something that was added on. So time does not make something more true. Like, time just makes it more familiar. Like, again, we're comfort beings. Our subconscious, like, it likes to be in comfort, but familiar is not the same thing as perfect or permanent. It's not the same thing as permanent. So I want to give you kind of the science behind it because I think it matters. So I don't want this to just be like hopeful sentiment. I want you to actually understand why it is true at a physiological level. So a lot of us have heard, and we know this, that our brain is neuroplastic. That means that it's not a fixed structure that got set in early childhood and stays that way forever. It's basically, it's constantly capable of forming new neural pathways and weakening old ones. So rewiring itself in response to a new experience. Again, not metaphysical language. Like, this is well established, heavily researched neuroscience. And how it works is every thought pattern, every emotional response, every protective behavior we've ever practiced creates a neural pathway. So you think about it almost as a worn path through grass from walking the same route over and over and over and over. And so the more you walk it, obviously the more more worn and well defined this path becomes, and eventually your feet find it. Like, it automatically goes down that path without you even having to think about it, about where you're going. So that's what a learned pattern is. So fear, like self-doubt, hypervigilance, the instinct to overgive or shrink or brace for disappointment, or all of those pathways, like they're built the exact same way, like repetition. You started young, kept getting reinforced over time until you thought it was the ultimate truth. And so the hopeful part of this is that pathways that are not used weaken over time. And new pathways, when they are walked consistently enough, become just as automatic as the old pathways were. So that's literally how rehabilitation works after a brain injury. It's how someone learns a new language as an adult. It's how a person who has spent decades in anxiety can, through consistent enough new experience, builds a nervous system that defaults to calm instead of constant threat. So the brain does not care how long the old pathway existed. It only cares what gets reinforced now. So it doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. It does not matter how deep the groove feels, or how automatic the reaction has become, or how many times you tried it before it did not fully stick. Every single pattern you learned is learned material. It's not identity. It's material. And material can be broken and rewired and released and healed and replaced with something entirely new, right? Given enough consistent repetition. So I want you to actually feel the weight of that for a second. Because the version of you that learned fear also, can learn safety. And the version of you that learned to brace for disappointment can learn to trust. And the version of you that learned you had to earn love through performance can learn slowly and deeply that you were always worthy of it without conditions. So nothing that was learned is actually who you are underneath it all. If It's just what got layered on top. And every layer that was added can be gently and patiently and consistently removed. So you're not broken. You were never broken. You were just conditioned, and conditioning can be undone. So let's talk practically about what this actually looks like, because obviously, when old materials surface, especially right now in this week with all the things going on cosmically, you want to resist the urge to make it mean that something is wrong with you. Like, this is one of the most common and most damaging reactions I see, is because something old comes up. Immediate story is, I thought I healed this. And, why is it back? What's wrong with me? Why can't I get out of this, rut or whatever? Like, I want you to release that story right now. Old material resurfacing is not regression. It's often a sign of exactly the opposite. It's finally coming up. It means you've grown enough, become aware enough. Your system can finally bring this piece forward for you to actually address it directly, instead of, it running silently in the background the way it always has. And once it can be addressed, it can be released. It's coming up to the surface, so it can be seen and witnessed and released. So also, I want you to be curious instead of frustrated. Because when the old belief or old fear surfaces, especially this week, ask it directly. Like, when did I learn this? Right? What was happening around me that this became my truth? Was this ever actually mine? Or did I absorb it from somewhere else? So this kind of curious inquiry is often the very first step in loosening a pattern script, because it separates the pattern from your identity. It stops being like, this is who I am, and starts being, this is something I learned, at a specific time for a specific reason. And third, use the clarity of this Kazemi intentionally. Mercury illuminated this clearly as a rare gift. So, journal about what it's surfacing right now. Say it out loud to someone you trust. Bring it into your practice or your prayer or your meditation, like whatever your process looks like here. Don't let the clarity pass by unused. This is a window that windows don't stay open indefinitely, right? So use the window. Fourth, be patient with the unlearning process. Just like the learning happened through repetition over time, the unlearning happens through repetition over time too. You're not going to release a decade-old pattern in one journal entry and one insight, even if it's a really good one. Like, every time you notice a pattern, name it as a learned pattern rather than identity, and consciously choose a different response. Like, you're basically laying down a whole new pathway, and that pathway gets stronger every single time you walk it. So I just want to give you a moment right now to actually sit with whatever's been surfacing for you, because, wherever you are, just let your body settle down. If it's safe to do so, you can close your eyes, but just take a slow breath in. Maybe put your hand on your heart. Take a slow breath in, feel it go all the way down to your belly. And then let it out even slower. Feel how it feels to have the air coming up your belly, into your chest, up your throat, out your nasal passages. And I want you to gently ask yourself, without judgment, what old belief or old pattern has been showing up louder this week? It's been showing up louder for me this week. And don't try to force the answer. Just let one pop into your head. Let it rise if it wants to. And once it's there, I want you to say quietly to yourself, this was learned. It was not always mine. And what was learned can be unlearned. And just let that settle into your body for a moment. Not as a mental exercise, but something that you actually feel. The permission that you are not stuck is what was given to you. That you're not stuck with what was given you. So take another breath and come on back. So again, nothing that was learned is who you actually are underneath it. It was layered on. And every layer that was added can be gently and patiently and consistently removed. You're not broken. You were never broken. You were just conditioned. And this new moon, this Kazemi, this whole exact moment that we're standing in right now is basically handing you the clarity to finally see it and begin releasing it. So thank you guys for being with me here today. I hope that brings a little bit of inspiration to your week. And yeah, just have an amazing week, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.